Cowboys get blown out on Thanksgiving Day, 41-16 by Washington, of all teams. They now fall to 3-8. What is Jerry Jones to do about Mike McCarthy and his coaching?
Well, Jerry Jones needs to replace him. It doesn't have to be this second, even though that wouldn't bother me either. This is really, it's hard for me to say this because I take no enjoyment out of it, and I think that Mike McCarthy is a guy that's qualified more so than a lot of coaches in the NFL to be a head coach, just not of this particular football team. When you have a situation where Jerry Jones is encouraging you to keep the offensive coordinator, who hasn't been bad, but some of the decisions have been questionable. Even last year when Ezekiel Elliott wasn't getting the ball and Amari Cooper was taking out of key plays in the game and he's on the sideline, et cetera, that's problematic. But I recall yesterday, Ezekiel Elliott asked out of a play. It was like third or fourth and inches, and he asked out of a play. There was another sequence where they had a fourth down scenario, and Mike McCarthy calls a pass play instead of a running play. I thought Tony Pollard could run the football, utilize him. That didn't happen. We see Gallup and Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb dropping the pass, that's not the coaching. That's on CeeDee Lamb. We get all of that. But that fake punt is on the coaches. The fourth and inches call when you elect to pass instead of run is on the coaches. When you look at stuff like that that's transpiring and you combine that with guys calling out the coaches earlier on in the season, him clearly not ingratiating himself. And listen, I'm not going to even go here because I'm going to be nice about it. But as a black dude, with you reportedly bringing in watermelons to crush them just a week ago to give an indication of how a defense should play, and that's your methodology in order to encourage brothers to show up and play with a bit more fervor and energy for you, that's a huge question mark. But I won't go there today. I'm going to be nice. In the end, what it comes down to is that you look at Mike McCarthy, and what we keep ignoring is that the NFL is not just about X's and O's, because the coaches are bright enough to know what the others are doing. It's about galvanizing the troops and making sure that they exhaust every means and measure to maximize whatever potential they have. It's called being a leader of men. And I don't see that from Mike McCarthy. And that, to me, is what the Dallas Cowboys are in desperate need of. And to act like everything falls apart because from a leadership perspective, Max, just because Dak Prescott isn't there is a bit bothersome to me. I don't buy that. I think some of that onus should be on the coach. And if this man is not the right guy for the job, move on.
They were 8-8 with Dak Prescott last year, and more of their offense. They were 8-8 with Dak Prescott last year, and more of their offensive line, and they were losing with Dak Prescott early in the season, right? I mean, I'll say this. I wouldn't have hired Mike McCarthy. I thought it was a bad hire. But just like I said when it came to benching Carson Wentz, they needed to do it 3 weeks ago, hold him accountable. At this point, what difference does it make? I think it's already a lost cause. The more I think about it, so what? Let's say he lets Mike McCarthy go. You think Jerry Jones is going to hire the right coach this time? Or is he going to hire someone else who, once again, won't take headlines away from Jerry Jones, attention away from Jerry Jones in the event that they do win? Meaning he will limit the pool of coaches he will choose from, and he will probably limit it to the less effective coaches, not to the young, charismatic coaches who might get, or even the more established coaches who might get credit for winning. So what difference does it really make? And let me say something else. Yesterday, he made a lot of questionable, he had showed poor judgment, obviously. From your own 24 on fourth down, like, what are you doing? It's a trick play, okay, fine. You have your $90 million running back. You're on 4th and 1. You give him the ball, maybe. Try a quarterback sneak at times instead of a passing play. With CeeDee Lamb. Didn't make any sense, right? Like a bunch of things didn't make sense. However, that's bad judgment. It's a bad day. It's a short week. It's Thanksgiving. All coaches tried trick plays yesterday. Some of them worked. Some of them didn't. He showed the worst judgment. Stephen A., I think there's something more important, though, and this is the reason I won't say let him go right now. I agreed with you about a month ago, but then I saw something happen. They came ready to play against the Eagles. They scored on the first possession. They lost the game because they weren't really good yet, and they're still not that good. They gave the Steelers a very tough game. I thought, that team is starting to look like a well-coached team to me, right? And then they beat the Vikings. The Vikings were on a streak. Like, the Vikings had just cleaned out the NFC North. They beat every team in the NFC North in consecutive games. That includes the Packers and that Bears defense, right? That's the team the Cowboys beat. So the fact that he shows poor judgment when he's kind of desperate, don't forget, both tackles went out early. And Zach Martin shouldn't even be a tackle. He's a tackle because Tyron Smith and Lyle Collins are both lost for the season. And then you lose what's his name, Cameron Irving. And who was, from that high draft pick from the Browns from like 5 years ago, right? And Zach Martin, who's actually very good, but playing out of position. They have no offensive line. So on a day where a lot of guys try trick plays because it's a short week, it's Thanksgiving, when he knows he's outgunned, he understands all that, and he knows now I don't even have my backup offensive line. It's bad judgment. But I've seen more important things than bad judgment in terms of play calling. I saw a coach who started to get his team motivated to play. So I'm willing to look a little more this season to see what happens before I say get rid of the guy.
That's fine. That's fair, Max Kellerman, and I can't knock you for that. What I would say in response to that is then we don't really need to rave that much about Mike Tomlin, do we? Mike Tomlin hasn't had a losing season. Mike Tomlin went 8-8 with a third-string quarterback, and we raved about that. Now, obviously, we know how excellent he is, how exceptional he is, and we know it was absolutely ludicrous for people alluding to him being on a hot seat a couple of years ago. But last year, he played with third and fourth-string quarterbacks. What you're telling me about Mike McCarthy is that things have to be ideal, and what I'm saying to you is that we've seen guys be given chances and have performed their duties with less than ideal circumstances. So if I was seeing that from Mike McCarthy, I would feel different too. That's not what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a guy that's dependent on things being ideal in order for him to shine. And that should not be the requirement in order to be a head coach in the National
Stephen A.,
Football League.
real quick, you don't have to be Mike Tomlin to be a good coach. Right, or to have a job as a coach. Mike Tomlin is a future Hall of Fame coach. Mike Tomlin is an all-time great coach. So, I praised Ron Rivera. He ain't Mike Tomlin, but he's a good coach, right? And Mike McCarthy at this moment ain't Ron Rivera either. But maybe he's good enough to coach the Cowboys. I want to see the rest of this year.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do, especially with Dak Prescott getting injured. But we shall see. Gentlemen, we got a lot more to get into. I'm excited.
Just against the best. But no one considers Brady in Mahomes' category right now. He's not in his league right now. No one, when you talk about the most talented quarterbacks, or forget about that, the best quarterbacks in football right now, Brady's name hasn't come up in a couple of years. Won last year. Even the year before we won the Super Bowl. Lowest scoring Super Bowl in history. Even then, Brady really wasn't coming up in those conversations. It's been a while, guys. Patrick Mahomes, best quarterback I've ever seen. Brady's more famous. He did it for long. But Patrick Mahomes, who do I want to see him play out of the NFC? I'd love to see him link up with Russell Wilson, who, in spite of his recent problems, was putting together early on maybe his best campaign, and over the last half dozen years has been, over that time, the best player in football. Maybe not in any one year, but over that whole time. And has an explosive offense and is tasked with winning shootouts every week. And maybe could draw the Chiefs into a shootout. Or how about a team in Brady's own division that's beat him twice and also has a very famous quarterback, which would be a bigger story because Brees would be coming back from injury in likely his last chance, and he's loaded maybe with his best overall team, maybe that he's ever played on. I'd love to see Drew Brees and the Saints go up against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Or how about Stephen A., the quarterback, that bad man who, let's face it, was the baddest man ever at his best until Mahomes came along. Let's see Aaron Rodgers and son of Aaron Rodgers, right? And Aaron Rodgers 2.0 link up in the Super Bowl. I think all those would be more interesting than the remains of Tom Brady, which is still pretty good, on a nice team that's lost to the Saints twice against Mahomes.
Max Kellerman, here's where you and I disagree. First of all, let me just, I hope that your heart is okay. I hope you don't fall and catch a heart attack on national television. I'm not convinced that Patrick Mahomes is the best quarterback I've ever seen. I still believe that to be Aaron Rodgers. Now, Patrick Mahomes might be better at this moment, but I believe that let me see him do it, and I believe he will, but let me see him do it over a long period of time. I believe that with my two eyes, Aaron Rodgers is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen in NFL history. Ever. I'm talking about the combination of throwing, standing still in the pocket, on the run, from the left or the right, scrambling out of the pocket. I think that Aaron Rodgers is the best, most talented, most complete quarterback we have ever seen in the history of the National Football League. That's number one. Number two, though, let me tell you how you're different than me. You're speaking, Max Kellerman, as a commentator and a pundit, and I totally get that. I understand that because that's the seat we're sitting in. My eye, however, is, remember, I'm a journalist too. I was a journalist and I became a columnist for Philadelphia Inquirer for 17 years, all of this other stuff. So I'm thinking about the storyline. To get to the Super Bowl, imagine what Tom Brady would have to do. Right now, Max, you're right about Aaron Rodgers and Russell Wilson. But the operative word here is Super Bowl matchup. That means once you get through those things, what would the story be? Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, great story, great storylines. They go to the Super Bowl, boom. But what if Tom Brady got there? What if Tom Brady, Molly, shows up and outduels Aaron Rodgers, outduels Russell Wilson in those 2 to 3 weeks that an NFC playoff matchup takes place with Antonio Brown and Evans and Godwin and Gronk? Max, Molly, could you imagine the storyline if he plays lights out for 3 weeks in the postseason? And then you got to face Patrick Mahomes at 43? Mm-hmm. No storyline would beat that.
Was so good.
We look at Russell Wilson, we look at Aaron Rodgers and say, we like it, but those two together, under those conditions, that would be special.
No, I think there's a better storyline than that. Now, I think you left out the most important part.
What is it?
And by the way, first let me say, you can argue Aaron Rodgers is the best you've ever seen in his prime. I first want to say that. You can argue that. Those are the two. I would say if you wanted to improve Aaron Rodgers, you'd give him a little more Favre, but less the turnovers. A little gunslinger, a little bit more team leader type that they rally around. I think that's Mahomes. But okay. The better matchup, Stephen A., first of all, if Brady got there, a lot of it would be about the defense. That's really what would do it, just like it was with the Patriots when he got there against the Rams and beat the Rams.
But that's not what I said.
And that would be a big story. The number one story would be the most famous football player in the world, Tom Brady, the face of the league, passing the torch or trying to defend the crown against the best football player in the world, the future face of the league. That's the storyline there. I got a better one for you. I brought it up before. The New Orleans Saints. Because Brady said he wants to keep playing, right? He wants to play till he's 45. We don't know if Drew Brees is ever going to play again after this season. We weren't sure Drew Brees was going to play this season. They're in the same division, Brady and Brees. Brees beat him twice. The second time, worse than the first. So one of the most beloved and greatest quarterbacks ever on maybe the best team he's ever played on or the most balanced gets his ribs crashed and crushed and his lungs punctured and comes back in the playoffs and faces Patrick Mahomes.
Sorry, Max.
Listen, Max.
No.
Max, listen to what I said to you. Listen to what hold on, Max. Listen to what I said to you. I understand your point about the defense. I said follow my storyline. If Tom Brady plays lights out in those 2 to 3 playoff games leading into the Super Bowl, there is no storyline that would eclipse that Tom Brady going against Patrick Mahomes. Not Drew Brees, not Aaron Rodgers, not Russell Wilson. Now, the defense played lights out, but Tom Brady struggled. You're right. But I said follow my storyline. Tom Brady plays lights
Tom Brady
out
was someone else,
and then goes to the Super Bowl against Mahomes. There is no storyline that comes close to that.
Yeah.
None.
Stephen,
Max, let me just say one more thing to you, too. I understand the
weapons.
Drew Brees one. Let me get in here real quick, Max. It's a distant second, but what was the storyline all offseason? Who's going to win? Is it Belichick or is it Brady? If Brady comes in and dominates and wins a Super Bowl, that's a whole other storyline. We debate that often. What's the Patriots dynasty about?
But you see what you guys are doing?
So there's that whole other piece. And Brady's way more box office than Drew Brees. Sorry. He's a bigger name.
You see what you... Actually, the highest rated Super Bowl, as I recall, was the Drew Brees Super Bowl, right after Katrina.
He's a big
Wasn't that the
name.
highest rated
That
Super
was
Bowl?
Peyton
Drew Brees
Manning.
was very, very popular.
That was Peyton
But let me
Manning,
just
Max.
say- Okay. Let me just say, all right, maybe. Drew Brees Super Bowl is very, very highly rated. Let me just say that what you guys are saying is if Brady does this, you mean if he was someone else? I know he has a lot of weapons, but Brady hasn't played lights out in consecutive playoff games in years. Like he couldn't beat the Dolphins last week of the season,
a few weeks
and
ago,
then lost
Max,
to the Titans last year.
A few weeks ago,